Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Healing Conversations. My name is Einav Avni. I'm an energy healer and alignment coach. This podcast, Healing Conversation, is really here to bring the message or the energy of natural healing physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. But enough about all of that. I am so excited to introduce today's guest to you all, Julie Ryan. Julie, it is so wonderful to have you in the studio. Welcome.
Oh, Enav, I love being with you. You are one of my favorite people and a new friend. And I just think the world of you, and it's an honor to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. As I was talking to people about you coming to the studio today, people were like, and everyone that I mentioned you to, they speak so highly of you. And of course,
Oh,
we had our interview together, and people, everyone that hears of you say has beautiful things to say about you. So I'm so excited that you're here with us.
oh, thanks for those kind comments. Yes, you were on my show, and we got wonderful comments about how much everybody enjoyed meeting you and hearing what you had to say as well.
Thank you. It was definitely a favorite experience of mine. So let's talk a little bit about you and introduce you to whoever was living under a rock lately. Tell us a
Oh,
little bit about you.
I'm a businesswoman and an inventor of surgical devices who learned how to do woo woo, and I'm a buffet of psychicness. How about that for an elevator pitch? Seriously, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have founded 9 companies in 5 industries. I've invented surgical devices that are sold throughout the world. Used to manufacture them, sold my company in 2015. That company sold many other ones before that. And I learned how to be a medical intuitive and psychic medium. I did not have dead people chasing me when I was a child, alone what I would have done with that if that was the case. However, I learned how to do this, and now I teach people all over the world how to do what I do. And everybody has the ability, and it's really fun, and it enhances your life in every area. And what I've learned, Anav, is once we connect with spirit, we can do it all. I don't understand why there's you got the mediums and the pet psychics and the healers and the past life people. It's like why silo it? You connect with spirit and you can do anything and everything you want.
And what made you think that you want to learn how to become a medium, intuitive medical medium and psychic?
I have a girlfriend who gave me a book called Anatomy of the Spirit more than 30 years ago. And it was a woman by named Carolyn Mace who called herself a medical intuitive. And I'd never heard that term before. And I thought, well, what the heck is that? Because I'd been in the medical supply industry at that point, and I was helping doctors and medical providers help people heal through supplies. And so I wanted to know more. I read her book. Back then, we didn't have the internet yet. So I went to a bookstore, the old fashioned thing. I went to a bookstore to see what I could find. And I came across a book called Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan. Dr. Brennan was a former NASA physicist who parlayed very complex quantum physics concepts into understandable English that I could understand as not as a scientist. And she was using energy to help people heal. And that fascinated me. So I called her school and I said, do you guys have anybody in my area teaching this stuff? And sure enough, they did. And then I met my mentor and studied with her for 6 years. Fast forward, now I teach people all over the world in a weekend what I've developed over 6 years. And people say to me, well, how can you teach it in a weekend if it took 6 years before? And I say, well, Barbara Brennan's information was out 40 to 50 years ago. Certainly, we've advanced a lot since then, number one. And number two, I equate it to we used to deliver messages via carrier pigeon, and then we'd use horseback riders, and then the mail, certainly, and now we communicate instantly, like you and I are doing. I'm in America, you're in the UK, and we're communicating instantly. So it's the same concept in that I've developed techniques that are instantly accessible to everybody, and it makes it really fun.
Well, I watched one of your live shows that you take questions and people coming on and asking all sorts of different questions, and it definitely feels it's like wow, it's like it feels like magic, like it's the how quickly and how easy it seems that you can connect with the person and the answer and the spirit and all of that and bring these answers that are as well very understandable. And actually, that's one of my questions is did you need to, when you talk about when you do the medical scanning, do you need to know everything, or is that spirit helping you to come up with the answers?
Well, I'm like a human MRI, and I can see in my mind's eye inside people's bodies with their permission, of course. And I can see broken bones, torn ligaments, viral infections, bacterial infections, cancer, metastasized cancer, things like that. And then I believe it's spirit working through me and with me to help that person heal themselves because nobody ever heals anybody else. No doctor, no medical provider, no healer like you or like me. We help the person heal themselves. I like to use the analogy of, let's say you have a big cut in your leg, on your leg. You go to the hospital and they stitch it up. Well, the doctor doesn't make your skin grow back. You make your own skin grow back. And that's how all of this works. Thank you for mentioning my show. Every Thursday night, we have a live call-in show, and people call in from all over the world. Last night, we did one, and I had a woman from Singapore call in and she was on the Zoom, we could see her, and she was in kidney failure. She was having dialysis. And so I got her on my radar and I said, and when I see somebody in my mind's eye, and obviously I can connect with anybody anywhere, I could find you, Einav, if you were on a planet in a galaxy far, far away. It doesn't matter. But this woman, I could see a hologram of her in my mind's eye, and then I envisioned shooting energy from her feet up through the top of her head. And I was looking at her from behind, and I said, your right kidney is functioning minimally, but your left kidney is not functioning at all. Your left kidney is dead. I mean, it is just not working. And I asked her if she was on a transplant list, and she said, no, not yet. And I said, okay, let's just give you a new kidney. So I watched a new left kidney get generated with stem cell energy. I watched the diseased kidney get removed. I watched the new kidney get put in. I watched all the plumbing, get clamped and get hooked back up and all of that. And on the right kidney, we did a healing on her right kidney and her kidneys lit up. It was really interesting because when the new kidney was put in place, it really helped power the right kidney that was operating minimally. And she confirmed what I had seen, that the left kidney was not operating at all and the right kidney was. Now, this stem cell energy is the coolest stuff ever because it'll regenerate any body part we need. And it looks like a light amber colored gel, and it has sparkles in it because it's woo-woo. You've got to have fun when you're doing this stuff. So it has sparkles in it. And it reminds me of this hair gel when I was a kid called Dippity Doo. And you can still buy it. Is that a great name? And so I watch it form whatever body part we need. I watch it heal lacerations and broken bones and generates new brain cells, generates everything like stem cells do. But the interesting thing about that is before, like say maybe 15 years ago, I would have seen a healing where I would see a donor patient, like what they do in surgery. I would see a donor patient, I would see my client, I'd see the diseased kidney get removed. I watched the new kidney that was coming from the donor get harvested, put in place. I haven't seen that in years. And it's interesting to me that stem cells are now part of the zeitgeist where everybody knows what they are.
Mhm.
Whereas back then, nobody had heard of them. So I find it fascinating that spirits communicating to us in a way that we can understand. if we were talking about stem cells 15 years ago, people wouldn't be able to visualize it because they didn't have any frame of reference from a human perspective. So it's fascinating what I get to see and what my graduates get to see. And I had a woman leave a note on, it was either YouTube or one of the podcast networks, and she said, I've been practicing doing this on my own just by listening to you. And she said, I have begun to be able to see what you're seeing just by listening to your show. And I thought, oh, how fabulous is that?
That sounds really, really fabulous. But when you say you see, do you actually see? Is that really a seeing, or is that like a knowing, or like a thought or something that comes in?
It's in my mind's eye. Spirit gives me information in the form of pictures of things. It's like I'm watching a movie real time. I get all my senses, you know. I hear things, I know things, I smell things, I feel things, all of the above. And that's developed certainly over doing this tens of thousands of times over the years. Cumulatively, I probably scan, I would say upwards of about 3,000 people a year. So it's just developing those neural pathways in my brain where it's like driving a car. You get in and you know what to do after you've done it for a long time.
Mhm.
Interestingly enough, I had a brain specialist named Dr. Daniel Amen on my show because I wanted to find out if he could tell off of a scan if there was a part of my brain that was more developed that allows me to do all of this. And sure enough, there was. I went to his clinic. They did a contrast, basically, it's called a SPECT scan,
Mhm.
and they could see what parts of my brain were lighting up with different activities. And he said, mine is very busy. And
Mm.
he calls that the God spot. So I believe that's what people who are meditators for a long time, how they can connect with spirit. People like you connect with spirit instantly. And so if we scanned your brain, I'm sure your God spot would be very busy as well. I thought that was fascinating from a scientific standpoint.
Yeah, yeah, that definitely is very interesting. I mean, yesterday I was walking with someone, and he says that he meditates regularly. Because when I connect with people, I connect with their subconscious mind, get their subconscious mind to guide me. So I
Right.
always say I have no idea what I'm going to find and no idea what we're going to do, because I'm not the one with the knowledge, it's your subconscious mind. But when I connected with him, he said, I meditate a lot, but this, what is happening here, while I'm connecting, with my guides, while you're already also connecting to my subconscious mind. He says, I've never been as deep as I have been in this session. And he was like, it's like, wow, that's the only thing that can comes up, right? Because it's things that are beyond anything that I
Yeah.
wouldn't know that this is what's going to happen.
Right. Well, and that's what makes what you do and what I do so much fun because it never gets boring.
Yeah.
Because I get to see new healings and have new experiences all the time, multiple times a week. And I tell my clients when I'm getting all excited about something, I say, this is just appealing to my inventor brain because I may be saying, oh, this is cool. I haven't seen this before. And then I'm describing it, and they can tell I'm as excited as they are that the healing is happening in that way. And then it's as if it goes into my bag of techniques. I'd say it goes into my bag of tricks. It's just inevitably I'll have somebody else show up with a similar situation, and that healing will already be in my repertoire. It just comes in instantly, and that's what makes it so much fun. I'll have people that will come to me with diseases and illnesses that I've never heard of, and they're telling me about it, and I'm looking it up online to see what I can learn. In the meantime, yes, I'm an inventor of surgical devices, but I didn't have a biology background or an anatomy background, certainly. So when spirit would show me different body parts, and I'd hear, okay, that's a liver, or that's an appendix, or another different internal organ. I went out and bought myself a big anatomy book that has full color drawings. And I thought, well, I can read, I
Mm.
can learn this stuff. So early on when I began doing this work, I felt like I was giving myself a elementary school refresher in anatomy and that kind of thing. And still today, I have a general understanding of what body parts look like. But if you ask most people, where's the spleen? I'm gonna go, no clue. I've heard of it, but I don't know where it is. So yeah, it's that's what I tell my graduates and my students. I say, go get an anatomy book. You can look it up online. Maybe I'm
Mm.
just old fashioned. I like to be able to see this big color, drawing in a book.
And so my next question is, I know I read or listened to one of Caroline Myth's books. I think it was something like why do people why you have chronic pain and why you can't heal it or something along those lines. Um, and I remember her saying that she would walk with one person and maybe say it's a headache. And so in the same week, she will have three people with headaches, and each of them will have a different root cause. And I'm wondering how do you find that? I mean, do people, in your experience, is it can you say, oh, it's a headache, then maybe this is the first thing I look at, or is it really about coming into it with complete curiosity and saying, actually, this is the headache is just a symptom of something completely different?
When I connect to somebody and I'm doing a healing appointment with them, I always go in blind first because I want to see where the energy is going to go.
Mm.
Before I connect with them, which takes a nanosecond, I will ask them for a list of all of their symptoms and I'll write them down and I'll say, okay, to get the most out of our time together, I have found from a time management standpoint, let me go in blind first, and then we're going to go boom, 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 boom down your list. Something's going to be identified, there'll be healing. Something will be identified, there'll be healing. When I go in initially, the energy always goes to the most needed area first. Somebody may tell me they got a headache, but I'm seeing that they got mold exposure. And when I've learned to do it that way over the years, because number one, oftentimes we're identifying the root cause, perhaps, of the headache that nobody else has been able to figure out. And or if they have something that's asymptomatic that shows up, we're heading off the problem at the pass. And so I'll go in, something will be identified, there'll be healing. Do that very fast. And then I always end the session. I don't have time to do this on my show, but I always do it with clients who have appointments. I'm looking for what's the emotional component that's caused an energy leak. There's always an energy leak in place before any kind of medical condition arises. And it's always caused by an emotional event, either in this life or a past life. And you're the queen of that, identifying, going,
But this is
okay,
this a really nice kind of like, hey, that's what I'm saying, that there's always an emotional
exactly.
root
You're
cause.
saying,
Like, yeah.
okay, this is on your dad's side, and your father and your grandfather and your great grandfather and your great 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 grandfather, and it goes back 7 generations on your, paternal side. So what I have found, my frame of reference is I'll see the energy field membrane is what I call the container that holds the energy that makes up our body and our spirit. I went through 12 years of Catholic schools. I was taught that the spirit of the soul is someplace in the upper chest area. That's not what I perceive. What I perceive is that the soul or the spirit, I use spirit because I think soul has a religious connotation to it. So I use the word spirit. Same thing to me, everlasting part of us. The spirit's the main part of us, and the body's inside the spirit. And I believe that's validated with old masters' paintings of religious figures. They are depicted oftentimes with a halo around their head or around their whole body. Well, that's their energy field, it's their spirit, it's their aura. It's all the same thing. that is contained in what I call the energy field membrane. And it reminds me of a really thin, stretchy plastic bag. And so what happens is there's an emotional event. It causes an energy block, which looks like a little kernel of unpopped popcorn to me, gets stuck in the energy field. Other life events, emotional energy piles on top of it, eventually causing enough pressure causes a blowout in this membrane. Body's leaking power. I use the analogy often in my classes of imagine going to the pet store to get a goldfish. They're going to put it in a plastic bag of water in order for you to get it home. Well, if you have a picture of that in your mind's eye, excuse me, the fish represents our body, the water represents our spirit because the body's inside the spirit, and the plastic bag represents the energy filled membrane. If there is a pinhole in that plastic bag and water is draining out a drop at a time, for a long time that fish is going to be fine. However, when enough water drains out, that fish is going to be in trouble. And that's what happens to the human body. So I'll envision going into that tear or hole, and I'll be given a year. If it's this lifetime, I can see a scene of what happened. Most of the time I've started in the past year, and I'm just saying, okay, it's 1955. And I'll say, where were you? How old were you? What was going on? Does anything come to mind that was an emotional event? And they'll instantly know. My parents got divorced. My grandfather died. I had my heart broken by a boy in the 6th grade, whatever. They know as soon as we illuminate it, it eradicates it. Energy filled membrane heals, body's working on full power. If it's a past life thing, I'll get where it was, when it was, a little bit about what happened. We'll correlate it with what's happening in their current life. And I'll always see a script, a semblance of a script rather, that continues through multiple lifetimes. And we're looking at the same script from a different perspective, different time, different place, different set of circumstances, same situation. So it's really fascinating what I get to see. And I believe it's the most important part of a healing because we can fix body parts all day long, but if you're leaking power, what's the point? You're still going to have disease and illness. I didn't learn that in any school or any class that I took. That's come in from spirit directly, and I teach it in my classes now.
So one of the questions that someone asked me to convey is really why do people get ill? Why do they have chronic conditions and so on? So of course we are definitely saying there is an emotional root cause and trapped emotions and all of that. But is there another something that gets into the mix? Why some people, because I imagine, for example, emotion of heartache, I guess most of us have experienced. But how come to some people it will then end up being a full-blown chronic condition, and some people it won't really affect them in that way? So I guess the question is really what is behind chronic conditions?
Well, let's talk about heartache, just because you identified that. And most of us, if not all of us, have felt heartache at some point in our lives, whether with a family member or a loved one or a romantic relationship or whatever. So, several things are at play. First of all, I believe that our thoughts create our reality. And thoughts don't have a meaning until they come into our heads, and then we assign them a meaning. And when we have a thought that we think repeatedly that feels badly, we go automatically into fight or flight. Fight or flight is an autonomic nervous system response in the body, it's a physiological response. And the body doesn't know any differently between what's a real fear and what's a fake fear. It just goes into fight or flight. So that repeated thought, it's like it gets in a loop. First of all, they're attracting more of it because thoughts have energy. That's number one. Number two, they're in a constant state of stress, fight or flight, which when somebody's in fight or flight, the body releases cortisol and norepinephrine, the stress hormones, which cause inflammation, we all know chronic inflammation is the root cause of all disease and illness.
Mm.
And furthermore, when we're in fight or flight, the blood drains from our brains, goes to our heart and our extremities so we can run away from the perceived fear, whether somebody's chasing us with a gun or whether we're running late to an appointment. The body is just reacting to each as it's something, some kind of danger. We're in fear. So we lose clarity when we're in fight or flight. And when we lose clarity, we just keep thinking the same thoughts over and over. All men are awful. There aren't any good men in this town. I'm going to be alone. I'm going to be a spinster. I mean, whatever. So what I teach is a technique called the 2-minute rule, which helps us stay out of fight or flight and be able to identify whether this is a real fear or a fake fear. May I share it with you and your listeners?
Yes, please.
Okay, 2-minute rule goes like this. When you have a thought that comes in that feels badly, it's always based in fear. Anger, jealousy, boredom, grief, actual fear, it's all based in fear. And we want to be able to discern between a real fear and a fake fear. A real fear, a rational fear, something's going to harm you or kill you, change the conditions before it does. Irrational fear is everything else, and that's 99.9% of the thoughts we think that are fake fears. So how you tell between the two is you just ask yourself, is this going to kill me in the next 2 minutes? It's a yes or no answer in this game. I know, and you're going to laugh a lot of the time. And when we do that, now if it's a real fear, it's a rational fear, it's going to harm you or kill you, get out of the road before the truck runs you over. That's a real fear. Excuse me. The irrational fear is, oh my God, I'm running late for this doctor's appointment. I waited 9 months. If I don't get in there, what if something's really wrong with me and I have to wait another 9 months? And then what if I develop some terrible illness or disease and it makes me bedridden and I can't work and then I can't pay the bills and then I can't buy groceries and I can't, please. We all go down that black hole of what ifs.
Mm.
So the 2-minute rule keeps you out of it. Is this going to kill me in the next 2 minutes if I'm running late to the doctor's appointment? If you're in fight or flight, you lose clarity and you go down the black hole. If, however, you say, no, this is not going to kill me in 2 minutes, you keep your clarity. You can say, oh, call the office, go, hey, I'm running late. Can I still come? If not, what's the soonest time I can get back in?
I love it.
The stress level down keeps you thinking clearly. The beauty of the 2-minute rule is it works in every situation. You can use it unlimited times a day. It's free and it's convenient because it works anywhere your brain is, and your brain's usually with you wherever you are. So, I've just gone into, it's a habit with me. If I have a thought that feels badly, my brain just goes, is this going to kill me in the next 2 minutes? And inevitably I'll say, oh God, Ryan, quit being such a drama queen. No, if you're stuck in drama, it's not going to kill you in the next 2 minutes. And you're going to laugh a lot of the time. It really helps us live a life of joy. And when we're in a happy, joyful state, most of the time, we're sending out that vibration and we attract more experiences in our lives to contribute to the joy. Do we have times when we feel badly? Absolutely. We're here to have the human experience. Although I don't stay in it very long.
Mm.
I'll feel the feelings. My best friend died last year very unexpectedly. I think I cried for 24 hours.
Mm.
And then I can communicate with her anytime I want. And I do. She calls me on my phone. And have I told you that? She does. It's wild. My phone will be sitting on my desk and it'll just light up and it'll have her picture and her old phone number on it. And it'll be dialing her phone number, which has been disconnected by her family. And I'll say, okay, Lisa, do you need to talk to me? And then I'll get her on the line, in my head. But it's happened 6 times. It's wild, really fun. I haven't had that happen with anybody else, but she was my best friend since childhood.
That is awesome. That is really awesome. So just a quick question still about the chronic conditions that we're talking about. can it also be a message or something that is left over from a past life?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
And
Yeah.
how do
And
we know, is it this
yeah,
life
well,
or past life?
when I do the energy field membrane scan and I go into that terror hole, I'll be shown a scene if it's past life and I'll get where it was when it was, a little bit about what happened. And then we'll correlate it with what's happening in their current lives. And it is absolutely something that they've brought in that they want to explore in this lifetime. I use the analogy of Hamlet to describe this. Think about how many times has Hamlet been written since Shakespeare been performed since Shakespeare wrote it in 1602? Who knows? But certainly same script, different perspective when we look at all the different variables. When was it written? Or not when was it written? When was it performed? By whom? What language? Where? Who were the actors? Who was the designer? Who was the whatever director? Different perspective on the same script. And so we'll see that in lifetimes. And yeah, I love doing past life scans. They are so much fun because oftentimes we can get information that we can validate with historic documentation online. It's just, oh, so I have an RAF story. May I share that?
Oh, yes, please.
Past life. There's a graduate of my class when he was in my class and we were doing the past life section. We did one on him. We did a scan and we saw that he was an RAF pilot. We got his name. We got where he was stationed. We got a little bit about what went on. And so we took a break, maybe a 15-minute break or something. When we came back during that break, he had researched it. He found the pilot's name. He found where he was stationed. He found his, birth date, his death date, where he grew up, all this information on him. And it was, let's say it was John Smith. He found John Smith at that base in that year that we got. And I have thousands of stories like that. It's so much fun
It,
to
it,
be able
it
to
sounds
get that
wild, actually.
information.
I mean, I
Yeah.
had someone come to me and say that she already knew that before we got together, that she was poisoned in a past life, and that's
Yeah.
why that was contributing to her medical condition in this life. And
Yeah.
as I was starting to work on her, I said, yes, that this lifetime is important, but also there is another lifetime that comes up that actually in which you will be headed.
Oh, geez.
And I was like, oh my God, I mean, just the thought about this kind of these violent ends that she has already met at least twice, and really, how is that energy, materializing in this lifetime? But yeah, I mean, I think for me, because it's all, um, it, in my work, I just really ask yes, no question, and kind of trying to build a picture. And in your work, you get the answers. I think I think I prefer, I think I prefer your method.
Well, come join us in Atlanta in October, the end of October. We're going to have a training. We have people flying from all over the world. It's the in-person one that I do once a year. It's a blast. October 24th through the 26th. A story is coming to mind of a present life situation that came up with a client who lived on the island of Guernsey, the northern islands in the UK, and I was she had this huge hole in her energy field. Remember, and she wasn't that old. She was like maybe in her late 30s, maybe early 40s. And I said, I went in and I saw this scene of her as a preteen, and I saw an explosion behind her. And I said, does that mean anything to you? And she said, oh, yeah, I was a victim of an IRA bombing when I was 11. She said, I still have shrapnel in my thigh. I was in the hospital for 3 months. And I said, okay, that qualifies as an emotional event, a big one. And so it can range from somebody called you a bad name when you were 3, and we think, well, that's no big deal as adults, but it was a big deal to you when you were 3 in your 3-year-old little mind,
Mm,
or something as dramatic as my client who was injured in an IRA bombing. And it really can go all across the spectrum. I think it's important to note as well that in the spirit world, they don't see things as right or wrong, good or bad. They just see it as an experience, which is hard for us to wrap our human minds around that concept. And yet we need the good and bad in our human experience because it's what helps us create.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard countless times from spirit that when we're going through something perhaps even horrific, they're saying, "Oh, cool. What's she gonna create out of this? How's she gonna get out of this situation? What things are gonna, help her on her life's path as she's going through this tough time from a human perspective?" And it's taken me a lot of years to wrap my head around that. And
Mm-hmm.
so I go to a place of, is it feasible? Yeah. Do I understand it completely from a human perspective? No. Do I believe I will once I'm back in heaven? Absolutely.
I think that's actually it's very important actually, because I mean, for me, when I work with my client, it's I always have that conversation that at face value, this experience was trauma. There was no question about it. It's really, yeah, horrific, horrible, all of that. But if we stay in the experience, then we really become, you know, victim, or stay in victimhood, or we can't come out of it. But when we look at it from a actually a soul journey, and what it actually here to teach us, then we can understand it better. Then we can really start to let go of some of the emotions, and really see how come this has happened. So for me, this is definitely a very relevant question. But I like that you're saying that spirit, yeah, it's all about lessons and learnings that they created or decided on before we came here.
Create. Well, and furthermore, most people, if not all, when they really think about what it was that they went through that was so awful, and they look back on it with some perspective a few years later, they'll say, yeah, that was horrific. And here are the good things that came out of it.
Yeah.
Even to the point where I've heard many people over the years say, yeah, it was awful when I went through it, and I would go through it again because my life is so much better now. And that's when the 2-minute rule comes in. Instead of staying in that loop on that hamster wheel, we can say, okay, if this happens, this is going to kill me in the next 2 minutes. If there's a flood and I lose my home and I'm living in a shelter or a hotel or something in the meantime while we're getting things sorted out, if I'm living in a hotel because I've lost my home, is that going to kill me in the next 2 minutes? No, it's not, although it feels like it will. And that's why I say, and then you're going to have another fear that's going to come in, and you use the 2-minute rule again, and you can use it a million times in a day.
Mm,
Just keep doing it. Keep yourself out of fight or flight. And that's when you can keep your clarity about you. And that's how spirit guides us, because spirit's always sending us guidance. It's whether or not we're receiving it. I like to say that spirit doesn't communicate on the I feel crappy channels because the vibration's too low.
right.
Spirit is a super high vibration because it doesn't have the density of a body. And that's how you and I are able to work with our clients and others. We raise our vibrational level to the level of spirit. We tune into the spirit channel, like on the radio or on the satellite TV, and we can get that broadcast.
Mm,
When we're on a low vibration channel, that's not coming in on that channel. They're
mm,
not broadcasting on that channel. And so that's how we get guidance. And nobody ever has an original idea. It's all coming in from spirit. I'm an inventor of surgical devices with a communications degree. How's that work? I didn't even know woo-woo yet. I didn't know it existed. But now I know, I was getting what I call divine downloads from spirit when my customers in the operating theaters, operating rooms, surgery departments in America were saying, this is such a pain when this happens during surgery. I wish there was a way to fix this problem. And then my brain would kick in and I go, oh, well, what if we do this? What if we do that? And then I know how to hire engineers who can draw up my ideas up for me. And I think everybody gets ideas, but it's just a matter of taking action on those ideas that are divinely guided
yeah.
all the time. No author, no composer, no screenwriter, no artist ever has an original idea. It's all channeled. J.K. Rowling really came up with all the Harry Potter stuff on her own? No way. George Lucas, you know, with all that Star Wars stuff, was
Mm.
he doing remote viewing on a different planet? Or was that information just being downloaded into his head? You think about all these creative people, James Cameron, with the Blue People movie, Avatar. Really?
Yeah.
You
Uh,
know,
Julie, I want us to change direction a little bit, and I want to, of course, mention your book that I loved, and thank you very much for writing it. And I know that anyone can get their hands on the book, of course, in a bookshop, I guess, as well. But they can go to your website and get it from. Can you remind us of the URL?
sure. Yeah, askjulieryan.com. You just go there on the homepage, you'll see get a free digital and audio book download. I give away tens of thousands of these a year. And it's about how we're surrounded by angels and the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets as we're transitioning. And it even comes with diagrams. So it shows how the angels are positioned and the deceased loved ones' spirits and the pet spirits are positioned as we go through what I call the 12 phases of transition. And the interesting thing about this is that university-based research shows that 90% of people see the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets within the 6 months before they pass. And it used to be that we thought, oh, grandma's just hallucinating because of the morphine. Well, no, she's not. She actually can see her mother's spirit who died perhaps 50 years ago.
So,
And so it's really fascinating.
so this I was curious because I think what you're saying is that um, everyone when they get ready to transition, they have deceased loved ones, family and friends and so on come to escort them onto the next life or next world or up there. Um, and I understand that people who may be going through maybe illness and so on, um, it might happen, like you say in the book, right? Maybe it can take even a few months, but there is that process, and the process is always the same. But then I read that you said that actually, even if someone dies very suddenly, that this process has already started previously. And to me, that was like, oh my God, tell me a little bit more about how that happens when the same process happens when you are kind of on that journey of slowly dying and versus dying very unexpectedly.
Well, it's important to remember that time doesn't exist in the spirit world. Time's a human creation. And when we keep that in the forefront of our minds, the 12 phases of transition that I witness can happen instantly. To your point, like in the case of a homicide or suicide, or can happen over days, weeks, months, even years. I mean, some people with cancer or other awful illnesses, it can take them a long time to transition. And so it's very reassuring to the family left behind to know, okay, my loved one who was shot or died by suicide, they too were surrounded by angels and the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets and greeted by them once they got to heaven. Everybody goes to heaven. All spirits go to heaven, even the ones that are awful when they're humans. The snarky personality stays with the body when somebody dies. Remember, it's just here to explore and experience the human perspective. It's as if we're playing a role in a movie. It's as if we're actors playing a role in a movie or a play. And there was a movie out in the 1980s called All Dogs Go to Heaven. Well, I'm here to tell you all people go to heaven too. And that has been really one of the most remarkable parts of this journey for me, because the first time I witnessed this was when my mother was dying in 2002. I'd never been around anybody who was dying before. And I had been studying the woo woo for several years, and I could see things in my mind's eye and all of that. And so I felt like I was balancing a scale because, on one hand, my heart was breaking because my mother was dying unexpectedly. And on the other side, I was seeing all these angels and spirits of deceased loved ones who'd been dead for a long time, but I knew who they were, some of whom I hadn't seen in 25 years. And I was like, what? Really? And our dogs that we had when I was a child, and dogs that my mother had had when she was a child that I'd seen pictures of through the years, they were all in the room. And I could see them, and I could see these other phenomena happening. And so it put a glorious component to a heart-wrenching situation. Furthermore, I find that there's lots of information out there about the afterlife and about near-death experiences and about past lives. However, there's not much information about what happens as we're dying, and that's what people are afraid of. Are we going to fly or are we going to fry? Especially in our Judeo-Christian cultures, we've all been taught about heaven and hell, and you better do this way or you're going to go burn in eternal flames. None of that exists. Everybody goes to heaven. It's been used to control the masses with fear for millennia.
I recently saw some bizarre, there's no coincidence. I mean, right? It's all planned. So I did happen to watch this video about um, people that randomly took pictures, not knowing that there was an accident or something, and kind of captured the soul, I guess, as it was coming up.
Mm.
And then of course that's kind of what you're saying as well, right? With the two angels that accompany the soul as it goes up. And for me that, because I saw the video, it was like it was so reassuring. I mean, I don't think I'm scared of dying. I guess it's more about the fear of what will happen to the people I love, staying behind and all of this. Um, but I've lost both of my brothers, and one from an illness that was, kind of we knew that this was happening. But the younger one died in a motorsport accident, so hence the very sudden, you know, situation. And for me, thinking that first of all, seeing that video with the soul going up, thinking, yes, it made so much sense. And then reading what you just said about the process of the preparation is always the same. That was also very reassuring. Um, so so I actually I understand. Maybe you want to share a little bit first, maybe about the 12
Yeah.
steps.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was really comforting along those lines of that somebody that dies instantly, that they go through the same, surrounded by angels and loved ones and greeted by them once they get to heaven. That it was really helpful to people during COVID when they had loved ones in the hospital and they couldn't be there with them. And they've really suffered since their loved ones have passed, and thinking, oh, I feel so guilty that I wasn't able to be there. And it's very reassuring to them to know that nobody ever dies alone, ever, 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 ever. We're all surrounded by angels and the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets. May I share how this all came about,
Yes,
the
please.
book and me even getting into this business? One day I was with my mentor and she was doing a healing on me. This was several years after my mother had passed. And I had seen these 12 phases of transition, what I've coined them to be 12 phases of transition, with several other people who were in the process of dying, whether they be family members or friends. And so one day I was in my mentor's office and she was doing a healing on me, and my deceased loved one's spirits are in the room. They're on either side of the table and they're helping in the healing. Well, one day, and this dead Pope shows up, and he's got the spirit of a dead Pope, and he's got his Pope hat on and his shepherd's rod and the whole 9 yards. And I said, well, who are you? And he said, I'm Clement. And I said, I never heard of a Pope Clement. Sorry. He laughed and he said, well, I was number 6. And I said, okay, how may I help you? And I'm thinking, why is this guy here? And he said, you're supposed to teach the world what happens when somebody dies, because it's been bastardized over the millennia and everybody's afraid of it. There's nothing to be afraid of. It's glorious. And I said, well, he says, and you know that. because you can see it. And I said, well, thanks so much for stopping by, but no thanks. I'm a businesswoman. People will think I'm nuts. And he said, no, 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 no. Everything you've done in your life has prepared you for this. And just get on with it. And I said, again, thank you so much for stopping by. I'm really not interested. Have a great day. So I leave my mentor's office. I get in my car to drive home. And just for kicks, I looked the guy up on the internet. Well, come to find out, this guy was in office when the Black Plague killed 2/3 of Europe, and he's best known for his prayers for the dying and his prayers for the dead. And I thought, oh God, Ryan, you can't make that up. I mean, I don't know them. So fast forward, I'm going on doing my mom thing, wife thing, businesswoman thing. And I'm in church one Sunday and I'm sitting between my husband and my son. And the priest from the pulpit says, wouldn't it be interesting if somebody could really tell us that we're greeted by angels and our loved ones and led to heaven? And I'm getting elbowed, from both sides. And I thought to myself, really, God, you're giving me grief from the altar, from the pulpit about this? Okay, okay, okay. So that's when I wrote Angelic Attendants to get this information out to the world. And then it's just snowballed from there, into all my business. Interesting point. When I was writing Angelic Attendants, at my mother's funeral, I realized that there's a prayer said at the end of every Roman Catholic funeral, and it's called In Paradisum, which in Latin means into paradise. And it talks about how the angels and our loved ones will greet us and lead us into paradise. And I thought, good heavens, that's what I just saw happen with my mother. And when I was writing the book, I did some research to find out, where did that prayer originate? And I learned it began as a 5th century Gregorian chant. So I have to believe, that it took till the 5th century, perhaps, till somebody was well educated enough that they could read and write. And certainly back then, those people were men living in monasteries and synagogues who were the scholars. And that little monk, whoever he may have been, was the one that wrote down that prayer. Furthermore, that makes me believe that everybody's been able to see the 12 phases of transition since the beginning of time. And perhaps as we've become more well-educated and proof-based, we've lost that. And many, many people now die in hospitals. They don't die in their homes like they used to throughout history. And so now in recent years, the research is showing that those spirits and angels are visible to people at the end of their lives. So I love it when science catches up with woo-woo, because woo-woo's been around a whole lot longer.
It is fascinating. It really is. I mean, and I guess the immediate question is that really again seeing, or can it be in a dream, or how do the people seeing it, do they know what it means?
Well, I think we all receive information from spirit in a way it's just something that we process in a way that's, what's the word I'm looking for? In a unique way, in a way that's unique to us. I'm a visual learner. So if I meet you at a party and you tell me your name, I'm not going to remember it. I'm going to remember your face. If you have a name tag on, I'm going to remember your name because I'm going to see it. But I'm a visual learner. So me being a visual learner, information comes to me visually from spirit, and all the other ways too. But my primary way is visually. Somebody who's an auditory learner is going to hear things, and that they're going to remember that. Somebody who's a kinesthetic learner is going to feel things, and then perhaps they'll see things or feel things. And I think that's why really good teachers teach to a classroom of children in all those ways. When we're learning to do addition, the teacher that really knows what they're doing will show us what the numbers look like, right? You add them together and here's how that works. An auditory child is going to hear the teacher describing it and they're going to get it. And then a kinesthetic child will use perhaps blocks They'll say, okay, here's 3 blocks and here's 2 more blocks. How many total blocks do you have? And I find that spirit is going to communicate in that unique way that we learn. And that can be in a multitude of those different senses. It also can be in a dream, simply because when we dream, we go back to the factory preset frequency vibration every night
Mhm.
because our brains rest. We're not stressed about something. We're not worried about, all this stuff we need to do. We need to make dinner. We need to do the dishes. We need it all, whatever. And our brains are resting and we're back in that high frequency. So again, we can receive the spirit communication through
Mhm.
that high frequency. I tell people all the time, when you have a dream that feels like it's in high def, the colors are more vibrant, the senses are heightened. You may wake up and the hair on the back of your neck or your arms is standing up straight. You remember all the details of the dream and it feels like it was so real. Well, that was a visit. That was a dream coming in from spirit versus a normal dream feels kind of murky and you remember little bits and pieces maybe, but you don't remember it very long after. Most of us don't after we awaken in the morning. So yeah, dreams are a really great way that spirit communicates to us, especially when we're in grief, because grief is such a low vibration. It's
Mhm.
like the spirit communications on the classical music channel of some upbeat classical piece or disco music. I grew up in the disco era. You can't listen to disco music and be in a bad mood. It's just not possible. You
Right.
know, so that's a high vibration. Whereas the low vibration might be some old time country music whiny song where somebody's complaining about mama, the truck, and the dog, and you feel terrible listening to that music. It's where are we tuned? And when we sleep, we go to a higher frequency, which is why I tell people that are grieving, especially if a loved one has passed, I'll say, ask them to meet you in your dreams before you go to sleep, and they will. Keep doing it until sometimes it can take a long time for them to show up. They're showing up. It's us being able to receive it.
So, but with everything that we are saying, are we saying that my brother, for example, the younger one, did he know that he was going to have this accident? Did he know
No.
that that day was his day? No.
Most people know if they're really in tune with their intuition, they can, we all have premonitions of things. I have a client whose mom was a pilot who performed in air shows. And the morning of this one air show, she was talking to her on the phone. She said, okay, I'll meet you at the airfield. And the mom was saying, I have a bad feeling about this. I have a bad feeling. I don't think maybe I shouldn't go up. And her daughter said, Mom, you've done this a bazillion times. You're an expert at it. Everything will be fine. Well, one of the engines failed and she crashed and died. So the mom had a premonition that morning that she was going to die. Another famous story, the late actress Elizabeth Taylor, her, I think, second out of 14 husbands or however many husbands she had, Michael Todd, she had a bad feeling about him going on a business trip and she begged him not to go. She just said, I really don't want you to go. I have a bad feeling about this. And his plane crashed and he died and left her with several little children. So people get premonitions. We all get it all the time. We all get premonitions. That's our intuitive ability. That's when we're able to receive that guidance from spirit. So to answer your question, to roll back around to that, Anab, did your brother know that he was going to die in that accident? He's here. He's next to you on the right. He's saying to me, absolutely not. He absolutely did not know. And yet his soul, his spirit knew. And that was part of what he came in to explore and experience in this lifetime. Perhaps in past lives, he was the parent of somebody that died very suddenly, like that. He was the sibling of, the colleague of, the friend of. And
Mhm.
again, back to that, how do we experience Hamlet? What are the perspectives that are generated through the different variables that appear in this experience. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what are the 12 steps?
12 steps. When somebody's dying, our spirit exits our body through the top of the head, hangs on, looks like a speech bubble in a cartoon, some of the characters' thoughts or what they're saying. And then the maternal spirit closest to the person who's dying, their spirit comes in first. It's all run by the closest maternal spirit. That surprised the daylights out of me. I thought God's probably got some departure department in heaven and he dispatches angels to help somebody when they're dying. I mean, really, when my mom was dying, my Mima, my grandmother, who had just died 6 months prior at 6 weeks shy of 100, she was there and she was running the show from the spirit world. She was bringing in the other spirits and the angels and the pet spirits. And I was like, what? That really surprised me. So it's the maternal spirit. My mother's deceased. It'll be my mother when I die. If she was still alive, it would be my maternal grandmother. If she was still alive, it would be her mother. It's always on the maternal side,
Mm,
which I thought was really interesting considering many cultures and religions, including the Jewish faith. The child is not a Jew unless the mother's a Jew that births it, right? So that whole maternal line thing is in every culture. We
mm.
just haven't paid any attention to it. So I'm here to tell you, if you're a mom, you're helping your kids from the grave, even. You're helping them from heaven. So then the paternal spirit comes in, and let's say somebody who's dying is in a bed and they anchor themselves at the person who's dying at their feet. Then angels show up. These are big old angels as I perceive them, but I'm a Catholic girl. I was taught angels have big wings and white gowns and a rope belt and they're barefoot. So that's how they appear to me because that's my human frame of reference. Somebody growing up in an indigenous culture in the Amazon may see angel energy as just a purple ball of fog.
Mhm.
Spirit's always going to communicate to us in a way that we understand who they are. So they're there. They form a circle with the paternal spirits at the person's feet, and then that circle opens up into a horseshoe, and then eventually a straight line across the foot of the bed. As they're progressing, different things happen in the different phases, in addition to the different positions of the angels and the spirits. More and more spirits continue to arrive. I call them the Welcome to Heaven Committee. And at the end, there are thousands and thousands of them that are present and they look like dots on the horizon. And they show up in period dress. So it's ancestors, it's spirit guides, it's whomever. It's so fun to see people in Renaissance era dress and maybe somebody from the 1960s that has on a mini skirt and go-go boots and looks like Twiggy, or somebody that's recent, and they're dressed just like as we dress today. So that's fun. Animal spirits show up. I can always tell if somebody's either living on a farm or has grown up on a farm because they're
Learn what's
horses and
coming.
chicks and dogs and cows and pigs and lammies and stuff like that. That's a riot. I'll say to the family, did your grandmother grow up on a farm or does she live on a farm now? And they'll say, yeah. And I'll describe what the animals look like, including there's a collie there and there's an Australian shepherd that's white and black with two different colored eyes. And they'll say, oh, that was Fluffy and that was, Rover or whatever. They know the pets' names. It's a
Mm.
riot. And then a couple of other nuances. May I share those?
Absolutely.
About phase six-ish, there are two additional angels that show up on either side of the spirit bubble. That's what I call the spirit bubble that's attached to the top of the head. I, by the way, can't scan somebody medically when they're dying because, again, the spirit is the energy source for the body. So it's like I'm trying to look at an x ray in a pitch black room without any electricity. I can't see anything.
Mm.
So these extra angels show up, and about phase 9, their wings start to move. And it reminded me, when I saw it with my mom for the first time, it reminded me of a giant owl. Silent movement, rhythmic, smooth. You can almost feel the drag that their wings moving create. And I saw a vortex being formed over several hours above my mother's head. I could see it, I could feel it, I could hear it. It had this upward pull to it. And it felt like I was in the car wash at the end when they turn on the dryers and it sucks all the water off your car before you drive out, right?
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, this is going to be interesting. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I was knowing that, okay, this is an integral part of my mother's spirit separating from her body. And we hear NDEers, near-death experiencers from all over the world say it felt like they were going through a tunnel and they were being sucked upwards. Well, that's the tunnel that I see. So when I was writing angelic attendants, I thought, I'm going to do some research online with this. And I just put owl wings vortex in the search bar. Oh my goodness. What came up was tens of thousands of aeronautical engineering drawings and pictures and articles about what's called the wingtip vortex. Every plane, every jet, every bird, every bug, anything that flies, a kite, there's a vortex that's formed of air and it causes lift.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, this is a phenomenon that's happening in the spirit world. And it's causing this vortex to form above my mother's head. And I watched her spirit detach from her body, go through the vortex, and then get escorted to heaven by the angels on either side of her spirit. So I find it incredible that something that's happening in the spirit world is causing a human phenomenon. And you can look up wingtip vortex, you'll be amazed at
Mm.
all the information out there about it. So, how fascinating is that? That tells me that the spirit world and the human world, which we all know intellectually, they're joined, they're all one and the same. But when we look at it from a perspective of the dying experience, they're really merged.
Mm.
Interesting point about the vortex, too. I always see the spirit come up and go to the right. And I thought, I don't know what that's about. But I was giving a talk one time, and there was a physicist in my audience. And he came up to me afterwards and he said, I know why the spirit always goes up and to the right. I said, okay, enlighten me, please. And he said, think about when you're screwing the lid of a jar on. You want the lid to go down, you screw it clockwise. He
Mhm.
said, when you want to lift it off, you screw it counterclockwise and you lift it up. And it's always a move counterclockwise up and to the right when you lift it off. And he said, every vortex is like that. And I thought, oh, thank you, angels and Dr. Physicist. And, it made total sense to me that's why I always see spirits go up and to the right.
And this is yeah. I mean, as I was reading your book, I wrote about I think 100 different questions because it was so fascinating, and I love that you have some question and answer parts there that kind of predicting some of the questions that I definitely had. Um, One question, I know that we said that the spirits don't see good and bad, and it's really about the soul agreement, right? What it is that we're going to experience here. What about when maybe us and the person, the deceased or the person is about to die, if we are not in good terms, or if there's conflict, I guess, between us and either the people that are dying, or maybe later on when we die, and they need to come and now escort us. Is there any relevance to all of these kind of internal family conflicts and so on?
Yeah, great question. I get asked that a lot, and I'll
Yeah.
hear from somebody, they'll say, I don't want my mom there when I'm dying. My mom was the witch from you know where. She was awful. She's the last person I want there. And I remind them that all spirits are pure love and the personality stays with the body when somebody dies. I say, when you meet her in heaven, you can give her an award and say, Mom, you deserve the, what is it, BAFTA award, or you deserve the Academy Award because you were just awful in that life and you played that role really well. And
Mm,
that helped me develop and create the things that I did. And again, when we remember that there's no right or wrong, good or bad in the spirit world, it's just an experience. We can look at people differently. And for instance, if somebody's like a drug addict and homeless and living on the street, and we think, why, how awful, they're benefiting from that in some way. Their spirit wants to explore and experience that. And so if we can look at that and say, okay, Godspeed. I wish you the best. Whatever it is that you came in to explore. One time, I used to live in Los Angeles for a long time, and my parents were out visiting, and we were in Hollywood, and there was a hooker that was walking down the street, a prostitute, and very obvious. She looked like Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman. I mean, you could tell.
yeah.
And my mother said, "Oh, look at that hooker." And I said, "Yeah, I wonder what she's been through in her life that's gotten her to this point. And I wonder what she's experiencing." My mom changed her tune. It was a different way for her to look at this situation. And I thought, maybe she's got little children at home, and this is the best way for her to make money to take care of her children. Maybe she's supporting somebody who's a loved one who's ill and she's having to pay the medical bills. I mean, we don't know. And
Mm.
there's always a much bigger picture. So if we can look at different situations, not only for ourselves, but most of us judge others and say, wonder how that's benefiting them.
But
It takes, it changes.
and my older daughter, she's a clear empath, like really. And she will see someone in the street and she will feel so sorry for them because of, say someone is limping and she's like, oh, and she's really feeling whatever she's feeling. And I always say to her, but maybe this guy is actually going in the street and he's so proud because he was, bedbound for 6 months and this is the first time that he gets to go out and he's like, look at me, I'm walking here. So it's like
Yeah,
a different perspective and really seeing the people are where they need to be and
exactly.
yes.
Well, it's like, you know, doing the dishes and folding laundry. And I think, I gotta fold all this laundry. And then I'll turn on some music that's fun, or I'll listen to a book on audiobook or a podcast or something, and I'll make it fun. And then in my head, I'm thinking, how fortunate am I that I have the ability to have a home with a washer and dryer and I get to fold this laundry. And it totally changes the energy around it. And
Mm,
and that goes back to our thoughts create our reality. Change your thought, you're going to have a different outcome.
mm, I love that. I have two questions.
Okay.
I've got three. I might go so many questions, but I think I'll go with three. The first one I want to ask is because I know that, we're all coming here and we're going away and we're reincarnating and all of that. So I guess that it is possible for us to, yeah, to be, say, one of the people that one of the spirits that is coming, for example, to escort someone on that final journey, but also be someone that has already reincarnated, right? So I might be sitting here in my current experience, physical body experience, but actually my spirit will be, also called on, right? When people is kind of, how do I explain my question? So when you have a psychic, communication with someone, you can have it with my soul from 15 lives ago, but I'm still here now in a new body. Does that make sense? My
Yes, it does, because every spirit has a frequency they keep throughout all of their lifetimes. So, in order to get in touch with them, all we have to do is think of them as we knew them from our human frame of reference. And that connects our satellite dish head, which can receive and transmit frequencies. It connects our satellite dish head to their frequency, whether they've reincarnated or not, easy for me to say, is irrelevant because we're connecting with their spirit. Like in the work that you do, you're connecting in with the person's spirit. It doesn't matter what they're doing.
Hmm.
So the other point that just makes my head want to explode because I don't understand it from a human perspective is we live multiple lifetimes concurrently. And I think, what? And yet it's one of those times that I've heard it so many times from spirit. And I get a yes when I ask, is this really true? And I get a yes from spirit every time I ask. And I've asked a lot of times. I go to, I don't understand it from a human perspective. Is it feasible? Yes. Do I believe I'll understand it when I get back to heaven? Absolutely. So it
Okay.
placates me in the short run
Yeah.
because, and furthermore, I don't think we're supposed to know all this stuff. We're supposed to have the human experience here. We're supposed to have the ups and the downs and the heartbreaks and the joyous times. And we're here to experience and explore the human experience. When we're in touch with spirit, it helps us on our human journey. But I don't think we're supposed to know all this stuff.
No, I was just wondering, because I might be sitting here, talking on one level, but then somewhere else, my spirit is called to answer some question elsewhere. And I'm like, will I feel it? Will I know that, you know, part of me is busy elsewhere? This is,
Now
it's
you're
also,
you're like on a safari in Africa at the same time that we're talking, and you're skiing down the Swiss Alps, and you're stomping on grapes in Washington State in America all concurrently,
yeah,
and
yeah.
we think, or you're living in Dickinsonian times, or you're living in caveman times, and you're living in whatever. The closest thing that I've been able to get to that in my brain is when I watch a movie that was filmed a long time ago, and I think, okay, that happened at that date and time, let's say in the 1940s. And then I'm watching it in 2025 and it feels real to me. So those actors are talking, they're doing the same thing in this time and when they filmed it, and every time somebody else watched it during those decades between
Mm.
the time it was filmed and when it's being watched. That gives me a little bit of a,
Yeah, I get it.
understanding, but for the most part, it just makes my head hurt when I try and dissect that.
Yeah, I get that. Um, what is one thing that maybe really surprised you, or I don't know if to ask if it's touched you, because I guess that in the thing that you're doing, probably every other connection is probably very touching, but maybe we'll go with a surprise. What is something, a reading or connection or communication that you've done with someone that really surprised you or that you were not expecting? Other than everything that you already mentioned, because you did mention a few today.
Yeah. Oh, thousands of things come into my head as an answer to that question. Certainly that the maternal spirit runs things when somebody's dying.
Mm,
That was a huge surprise to me. And as a mother, I love that it's the maternal line,
mm,
that's doing that. Another one is that we all come in with the ability to communicate with spirit. We're doing it all day long. It's just that we get 70,000 thoughts on average into our heads, and we're trying to navigate that in a way that works with our lives. But along those lines, that we can communicate with any spirit in any moment, whether that spirit's connected to a body or not is irrelevant. And also whether we knew that spirit or not is irrelevant. Who do
mm.
you want to talk to? You want to talk to your dead grandmother? Do you want to talk to Moses? Do you want to talk to Elvis? It doesn't matter. You just think of them, that tunes your satellite dish head to their frequency, and you can have a communication with them. So I find that really helpful when I want to communicate with somebody and learn some information perhaps that I'm researching and I'm not finding. Even with the AI, AI is great, and AI is being used to communicate with spirits now. And we all have the ability to do that too. It's like we can use a calculator, or we can add numbers together in our brains. It's just another way for us to communicate with spirit. I am really excited about the AI capabilities in communicating with spirit because it's changing the zeitgeist. in the world of, I think it's making us more spiritual. It's allowing us to know, okay, we do have advocates, we do have spirit guides, we do have a source of guidance that's available to us any moment of any day. And I find that really just incredible and very exciting.
Mm, So talking about that, in your book, you mentioned the story when you went to visit your friend Steve in the office and saw the Native American chief and uh, realizing that probably that he was one of his guardian angels. Um, so we all have guardian angels, right?
We all have a guardian angel that stays with us through all of our lifetimes, even when we're between lives. And I see that guardian angel in surgery, and it's always over the head of the anesthesiologist that's working with the patient. And then other deceased loved one spirits are in the room too when somebody's having surgery, and there's a surgeon spirit or two or three over the heads of the actual surgeon or surgeons that are performing the procedure. And so the angels and our loved ones' spirits aren't just with us when we're dying, they're around us all the time. And I see them, like I said, in surgery, and there's always a correlation between how much prayer is being said for the person and how many spirits are in the room during the
Mm.
surgery. I have lost count of how many times I've seen that. And I'll say, is your husband on a prayer chain? And my client will say, yeah, like five of them. And I'll say, I can tell because that room's really crowded with
Nice.
spirits. But I can see in the operating room, the operating suite, operating theater, as you guys call it in the UK, and read the anesthesia equipment. I can tell you what their blood pressure is, what their heart rate is, all that kind of stuff. I can see what they're doing. Actually, where are they in the procedure? Are they closing? Are they getting ready to you know, stitch up the patient and get him to the recovery room. And I believe that that's why I had all those decades in that industry because real time I was in many, many, many surgeries over the years, early on as a sales rep, and then to the point once I started my first company at 25, by the way. I was in developing products, testing prototypes with my team and things like that. So I believe that's why I have that human frame of reference.
Well, to me, it's all fascinating and amazing, and it's like really wow. I mean, what an incredible, experiences you must be having all the time. But this brings me to a question, the last question, really, of someone that asked me to convey another question, and that is that with all of this incredible work that you do, helping so many people and their loved ones on their transitions and communicating with so many spirits and so on, how do you look after you in all of that craziness?
Well, I detach from all of those. They're called bioplasmic streamers with everybody with whom I work. I pull them out of my body at the end of the day when I get into bed at night. I I pray when I go to bed at night, and I pray in the morning and meditate every morning. And I exercise. I go for morning walks. I get sunshine. I do my best to eat healthy meals, and I really, for the most part, live a life of joy. And it's because I'm in such a high vibration during the day when I'm working with clients and having conversations like this with people like you. And and then I have my regular life as a wife and a mom and a grandmother and a friend and a sister and and all of that. And I just really am so blessed and live a life of joy. And it gives me so much joy too, and that like if I can help somebody just one teeny weeny little bit in their lives, either with identifying something that's causing a chronic disease or illness, or helping families as they have a loved one who's dying, and all the other things that I do. And then I've gotten to meet these amazing people as clients and students from around the world. What an adventure my life has been. I laugh and I think, God, if I get run over by a truck tomorrow, okay, it's been a heck of a run. And I think I'm going to be around for a while to continue to explore and experience things.
And it's definitely our privilege to have you amongst us to share all of your wisdom and knowledge and reassurance and help in everything that you do.
Same right back at you, babe. Same thing for you. Yeah.
Julie, I think I could spend days speaking with you, and I have so many questions which we'll probably have to come back in different, other podcasts. But thank you so much for being here with us today. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and thank you. Thank you so much.
Me as well. Anybody wants a free copy, julieryangift.com, and sending you lots of love from Sweet Home, Alabama. Mwah! Bye,
Wonderful.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.